Hello, everyone, and welcome to my presentation. My name is Diego Ojeda, and I'm a Spanish teacher in the city of Louisville, in the state of Kentucky, in the United States. And I would like to welcome all of you to this presentation. I hope you find it helpful and useful. Okay, so today we're going to talk about how to make language learning real and relevant. Of course, we're thinking about our students because teaching language can be something that we assume and understand as real to us. But is that the same experience we're giving our students? Is language learning real to them? Or is it, as Maria Caso will say, kind of like the acting of education, part of that acting of education? So we're gonna talk about how to make language, second language learning real and relevant. As I mentioned before, my name is Diego Ojeda and I teach at Louisville Collegiate School in Louisville, Kentucky. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing that we need to take into account is to understand what means real, a definition of real. So I went to the dictionary, the Merriam-Webster's dictionary, and I found three important things that kind of like comprise what real means. Number one, something that is real is non-artificial. And we're gonna put all of this in context with the language class. Number two, something that is real is not fraudulent, okay? And number three, something that is real is not an illusion, is not illusory. In other words, real means genuine, okay? So every definition, every word that we go over in this presentation, we must relate to our experience of teaching a second language. So let's take this step by step. So the first thing, real is not artificial. It's something that is not artificial. Okay, what is artificial? In general, artificial is something man-made, something that doesn't come from nature, that we created, right? So for our students, that concept of something artificial acquires a very different connotation. It's not about something that is man-made compared to something that is nature-made. For our students, artificial can be pretty much everything that they won't find natural in the classroom interactions, okay? Anything they won't find natural in the classroom interactions. And what happens is that these interactions are mostly human interactions. So we must strive for a natural interaction with our students. Are we natural in our approach to teaching second languages? Or are we kind of like being a different person? Kind of like, I want to teach the way that guy in college taught me how to teach. That will be artificial to the students. So the students, for them, something artificial in the second language classroom, it's anything that won't or they can't find natural. So what aspects of our second language teaching or instruction seems very artificial to our students? Well, let's keep talking about this. So, for example, for our students, it's very artificial when the language is not used in context. When suddenly we start the class talking about what Pepito did yesterday, just because we need to talk or use the preterite tense, because that is the grammar topic that we are studying right now. Okay, so looks like we're gonna talk about Pepito again. Is that a real context for language learning? Is that motivating? Is that connecting our students with the language? For our students, it's very artificial when we only use the target language to translate with what we just said in the first language, in the native language, in their language. I have seen many classes where the teacher is explaining in English about the target language. So guys, in Spanish, there are two verbs for the verb to be. You have ser and you have an estar. And each one of those verbs have different uses. En español, el verbo to be es ser y estar, y cada uno de ellos tiene dos usos diferentes. I know it's gonna be a little complicated, but I don't want you to get nervous because we're going to study each one of the uses of ser and each one of the uses of estar. Yo no quiero que estén muy nerviosos porque vamos a estudiar las diferencias entre ser y estar y los usos de cada uno de ellos. Okay, so the student is there just thinking, okay, I really don't need to listen to the target language or pay attention to the target language because everything has been translated to my native language, the language that I can understand. Pretty cool, right? Or the opposite, when the teacher says something in the target language, but immediately translates to the students. That is artificial. That is artificial to our students, okay? What else? When the teacher assumes an alternative personality. See, it doesn't matter if the teacher is native or not native. Let's say the teacher loves to dress up in a specific way, in a very attractive way, and this is day after day after day after day after day after day. And the kids laugh, the kids seem to enjoy it, and the teacher thinks that the kids are enjoying that, so the teacher keeps doing the same. Or the teacher will wear a funny cap, or the teacher will have these mannerisms that are absolutely just part of the act of the class. Well, even though your students might enjoy that, it seems to them artificial because it's artificial, right? How are you gonna create real connections with your students in the classroom if the first thing your appearance is absolutely artificial? Unless that's the way you dress up and that's the way you behave outside of the classroom. If that's the case, then that's you. That's your reality, right? Let's think about me and my experience. I've been teaching for a very long time. And yeah, I was artificial at a time in my career. I thought that because I was the native teacher, I had to know everything. So I acted, you know, in a very knowledgeable way in front of my students. I wasn't being myself because you know what? Behind this tie, there's a fun guy. Yeah, behind this tie, there's a person who enjoys life. Behind this tie, there's a guy who really enjoys the interaction with their students. See? But I wasn't allowing myself to be that person during class. I had to be this serious guy who will seriously talk about how the Spanish language works. So, in other words, I was also artificial. right? And remember, we're striving for real in the classroom. The language class can also be artificial when we are constantly working with too many fictional stories, okay? And the kids might find them interesting for 2-3 weeks, but if we keep doing the same over and over and over and over again, and living in this fictional world, the students are going to disconnect pretty quickly, okay? So I think it's a matter of combining a little bit those fictional stories with real life situations. It's also a matter of like, where are we using the fictional stories? If we're talking about little kids, we're talking about lower grades, maybe they will enjoy those fictional stories way more than trying to use the same fictional stories with the middle school or the upper school or the college level, okay? They'll be interested, they will be curious at first, but then they're gonna be like, what's going on here? But yeah, okay, we have many fictional characters here, fine. Yes, we use the language, but when that happens, we are focusing only on the vocabulary, and we're focusing only on how the language works. And that's fine, but that's not everything in second language acquisition or learning. Second language learning is connected with culture, it's connected to behaviors, it's connected to social aspects. And when the students do not have the opportunity to connect with that reality, they disengage pretty easy. They might be remembering some things, but we don't teach languages just to be able to use some words and use some grammar structures. We teach languages to be able to communicate with real people. So that aspect is a little forgotten when we have too many fictional stories. Okay, and what else? It is very artificial for the students when we constantly give them cultural projects that only seek information about a specific issue or aspect of the target language world. Okay, guys, we are going to do a project on food in Latin America. Okay, guys, we're going to do a project on sports in Latin America. Okay, guys, we're going to do a project on how the education works in Latin America. Okay, fine, but it's only information, and the students will just bring information that will present to the class or in a report, you know, and we are happy because they are using the target language presenting those things. But where is the experiential aspect? Where is the connection, the human connection there? Huh? Now, it's very different if instead of asking them to research on the foods, we encourage them to make the food themselves. That is experiential. That is different, okay? What if instead of like encouraging them to learn about the education, how education works in Colombia, we encourage them to get in touch with kids their age in the target language country and talk to them. Hey, what do you do in math class? What are you guys studying in math class? Wow, we're not doing that. We're doing this. What do you guys do during breaks? Do you have breaks? Yeah. Instead of finding just information. So these aspects, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are very important to keep in mind when we want our classes to be real, because those aspects are very, very artificial. Now, remember the second, what is not real, what is fraudulent. Okay, and what is to be fraudulent is to give a false impression, like in the picture, right? You look one way, but in reality, it's something else different. So when we talk to our students about why are we studying the language? So the impression that we try to give them, it's always to try to convince them, you know, to study the language. But what is the real reason why they're studying the language? Is it because it's just part of the curriculum? Because it's a requirement? Because, and how many times we repeat this? Because learning a second language is very important, okay? And we kind of like believe that they will understand that. Well, learning a second language, it will be very handy in your future, okay? And learning a second language will allow you to get more money. Your employees will give you more money if you speak Spanish in the United States. Oh, well, you never know when you're gonna be traveling to a target language country. So you need to know the second language because of that. Okay, I'm sorry, but to me, those reasons that I'm presenting here are fraudulent reasons, okay? And they do not make up even the 10% of the importance of learning a second language. These are just excuses. And we think that they are as important to our students as they are to us, but they might not mean anything to them, okay? How many of your students are in reality going to go to the target language countries in their lives? And I know that depends on many things, yeah? How many of them are for sure going to be using the target language in their jobs, in their future? So what, just because of that, then they don't have to learn the language? No. So what we need to help them understand is that we learn other languages because we live in a very big world. Because when you learn a second language, you find out about other cultures, you get to know people and you get to understand people. And that makes you happy. So we learn languages because we want to be happy. That's simple. Who doesn't want to be happy? You're going to save a lot of time just telling them we learn languages because that makes us happy. Because so many reasons, right? Real means non-illusory. Something, what is it? What's illusory? Something that deceives or misleads intellectually, okay? So sometimes we bring to the classroom some things that are very, very close to what a stereotype is. And we make fiestas, in the case of the Spanish class, with a bunch of sombreros. Or in the French class, they use that little hat, I don't know what's the name, and they wear these little mustaches, you know? So that's kind of like an illusion. This is the culture that we're studying, when in reality it's not. Because even if you go to Mexico City, you're not going to see people wearing those big sombreros on the street. Come on. So why? Why? We cannot allow our students to believe, as they probably have heard somewhere else, that everyone in the Hispanic world lives in poverty. And it is very sad when you see books, especially written for Spanish students in the United States, where they always portray characters in the Latin American world as being very poor. Well, I live in the United States of America. I'm an immigrant. I have seen many things in my country and in the United States. And let me tell you, I have seen tough things in the United States. I have seen poverty in the United States that is similar or sometimes even worse than the one that I've seen in Latin America. So let's not create this illusion of the target language world. Let's be real, okay? Let's not just stay with the conception that every government in Latin America is corrupt and corruption is rampant in the Hispanic world. I'm talking about the Hispanic world because that's the example that I have handy, okay? And I know that for French, German, and Italian, there are so many other stereotypes that what they do is to push students away from real language learning, okay? Let's talk about corruption. Let's just think about the last 4 years in the United States. That's worse than the last 100 years in Colombia, okay? So when we use some expressions in the classroom, ¿qué pasa, cabeza de calabaza? Nada, nada, limonada. Or the famous, ay, 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 ay. Okay, so I understand that these expressions can be used as motivators to learn chunks of the language. If they have a catchy sound and the rhyme, the students will remember them easily. But we must be very careful with what we do with this type of expressions, because in the subconscious mind of the students, this becomes the culture and the norm. So the next time they see a person from the Hispanic world, they're gonna start, thinking that they are making a connection with that person just because they are starting with the When I came to the States, I came to this rural school in the state of Wisconsin. I was the only minority teacher. I was the first Hispanic teacher. So they had teachers before who were not Hispanic. And the welcome that my students gave me was the trying to connect with me. But at that moment, I wasn't sure what the was. And I thought that some of my students were going through an epileptic kind of like attack or something like that, because I wasn't familiar with that. So it's the same thing. Hola, hola, Coca-Cola. So we work really hard at teaching the language so our students can use the language in real contexts. But the first thing that they're going to say when they have the opportunity to talk to someone who is a native of that language, especially in Spanish in this case, is hola, hola, Coca-Cola. Okay, see what I'm trying to say? So I'm not opposed to the use of these kind of expressions, but I think they give the wrong illusion because that's not the Hispanic world. And many of these expressions used today in world language classrooms are not even used in the target cultures, in the target societies. And when we talk about society, we talk about something really important to the language class, which is the social linguistics. The social linguistics talks about the appropriate way to use the language in appropriate contexts. So we need to go over that. So before just having the students memorize all of these expressions, we need to talk about when is appropriate to use them. And many of them are just going to be appropriate for that particular class, not for real life. Okay? So those three things. What is real? Non-artificial, non-fraudulent, and not illusory. So I just explained, in other words, how can we make it real through the back door, okay? Muy bien. We must always strive for genuine. That's the most important thing in the language classroom. Genuine relationships with our students, between students and teachers, genuine conversations. genuine materials, see, which is not the same as authentic materials. Genuine and authentic is two different things, okay? Because you can find an authentic material from the target language culture that is not that culture's genuine. Let's say, ooh, I went to Mexico and I brought a bunch of cereal boxes in Spanish. Those are my authentic resources in my Spanish classroom. That might be authentic, but that's not genuine because cereal is not genuine from that culture. Hello, right? It doesn't matter if the teacher is the only genuine resource, as he or she is the most important and most credible resource in the classroom. So everything starts with us. Reality in the world language classroom starts with us. If we're not real, the class is not real. If the class is not real, the kids are not going to be able to perform in reality. Even if they know the language, they're not going to be able to connect with the real cultures. So an invitation to keep that in mind, okay? I'm not done. All right. Now, the name of the presentation is Real and Relevant. So what is relevant? Relevant is something that has a significant and demonstrable bearing on the matter at hand. Something that we can demonstrate that is relevant, that is significant. So we must try to connect our students with opportunities to actually use the language in real life. Meaning, we must drop those fake conversations. Okay, guys, today we're gonna write a conversation. Get yourselves in groups of 3 or 4 students. Every student must say at least 3 lines, and we're gonna talk about cooking. Okay, yeah. Not to mention that some students really do not enjoy that. I hate when in teacher meetings, they do these activities where you have to stand up and get in groups and act silly and this and that. Oh my gosh. I just think about some of my poor students when they are made to do that in the classroom because their grade depends on that. So how are we gonna connect our students with opportunities to actually use the language? How are we going to make this significant? How are we going to help them demonstrate what they know and in a relevant way? Okay. Well, for those who live in areas where there's not a lot of target language population or community, social media provides a lot of opportunities to do that, okay? Obviously, I understand that there are some schools that doesn't allow students to use social media, but there are different kinds of social media out there that are safe for students. Or maybe they can do it through you, right? So you can play a role being a bridge, an intermediary between the students who cannot use social media and the teacher who can use social media, and you can collect their questions to the target culture, and you go on your Twitter account or Facebook and ask those questions to the target language people, and then you bring the answers to the class. Hey guys, yesterday I talked to some people in the Hispanic world, and these are the answers to your questions. See, we need to do what we need to do, all right? And but the teacher, it's very important that the teacher plays that role. You can be their opportunity to connect with the target language. You can be their opportunity to make class relevant. Oh, but I'm not a native teacher. It doesn't matter. You are the Spanish or the French or the Italian teacher. You're there because of a reason. And it's a very strong reason that made you decide that as your profession for life. And I know that you have gone to these countries where the target language is spoken. And I know that you have friends who speak that language. And I know, see, you can be that, you can take that role for your students as well. Muy bien. Entonces, what is relevant? Relevant in the world language classroom. something that is practical and that has a social application. So if what you're doing in the classroom doesn't have any type of social application, meaning you cannot apply that to society, you're wasting your time. You are wasting your time. So it has to be practical. Relevant. It is relevant when it happens in person. It's not relevant when the medium is artificial. Let's go back to that, okay? So they must happen in person. When we have the opportunity to connect, it's very important because it's personal. But if the student doesn't have the opportunity to connect to the target language culture because they don't know anyone, they have been living in this small town in Iowa their whole life and their whole family is there and they have no idea that the world is bigger than that small town, then us as the teachers can help them make it relevant. You know, invite a friend to help you via Zoom, Skype. If you can probably bring them to the class, bring them to the classroom. See? Someone in your family, maybe. Someone that will, you know, allow the students to connect one-on-one. Sometimes we have students who work, especially high schoolers. And sometimes they learn more the target language at work than at school. That's only because that's relevant, see? So we must strive to find that kind of relevant power in our classrooms, you know, because otherwise they're gonna be learning more outside of the school than inside of the school, which is not bad, it's good, you know? We must motivate our students to work with immigrant organizations. There are many immigrant organizations or organizations that work with immigrants around the United States. If not, you can easily go online and find an organization where the students can work with, okay? This is very important, especially in the United States context, because there are over 60 million immigrants, Hispanic immigrants in the United States, okay? And because there are many people who are working hard for this country and are part of the community. So our students need to understand that that's their country. It's not a different country, okay? So when they work with an organization that works with immigrants, they start understanding those things. It makes it relevant to them. It's practical, in-person society. Okay, the ability as an information retrieval system to retrieve material that satisfies the needs of the user. Okay, we keep talking about what's relevant. In reality, we do not study a second language just to pass an exam. That might be true in Spain sometimes, where people who doesn't speak Spanish and they want to work, they have to take the DELE or CIELE exam to show proficiency in the language, and they study to pass the exam, and it's very hard, okay? But when we have the opportunity to teach a second language to help those students communicate and understand better the target language culture, then we gain much more than just studying for an exam. If we only study for the exam, that's going to be our only concern. And we are really not going to understand that, as I said before, speaking a second language makes us better people, okay? Muy bien. So, how can we make world language instruction real and relevant? Okay, I gave you some ideas, but now let's just dig into it. Okay, muy bien. Entonces, artificial versus natural. All interactions in the classroom, as I said before, must be natural, not just based on what education should and has been. Meaning, education can be so artificial just because that's the way it has been for years. And is it working the way it's working? Mm-hmm. But we keep doing the same thing because it's what we have done for a very long time, okay? So, for example, we talk about participation. So what is participation in the class? Is participation happening only when the students say something? I mean, there are so many ways to participate in a class, right? Just by paying attention, following the teacher, doing what the teacher is telling you to do, that should be enough to give you or grant you a good participation grade. But the problem is that we always seem to give the impression or the message that participation has to be connected to oral production. And if the kid doesn't say anything, that kid is never going to have more than a C for participation, because we kind of like give them a C because, you know, they're quiet, they're not undisciplined, you know, they try, see? So like in real world, you know, I mean, how do you participate with your friends, how you participate in a family context, how you participate in society? Always talking? Always saying something? No. Do they cancel you because you don't say things? No, they still love you. They still give you the A because you can participate in so many ways because you're natural. So let's give value to that natural aspect of human beings. Same thing with assessment, okay? So what is the point of assessment? To give a grade? So when the kids take a summative assessment and they get an X grade, then we just move on to the next chapter and we don't revise what's going on. Maybe, yeah, you want to make corrections? Okay, I'll give you 10 more points for the corrections and then move on. Assessment should be an opportunity to keep learning. And the attitude of wanting to keep learning should be that aspect that will grant a good grade in the class, not the numbers based on an artificial grading system that we have adapted from subjects that doesn't have to be anything with second language learning. The project, we talk about projects that are meaningful, right? Project-based learning. I like project-based learning, meaning that the students have a project, they work on that for the whole semester, and they come up with a product to show something that can benefit their community. That's fine, you know, but sometimes it can also be very limiting because we're so focused on one specific thing for so long that in reality, some students are gonna lose interest, and those ones who are pretty connected will be specialized in one thing where we must strive to give them ample opportunities to know and connect with different aspects of the target culture. Okay. We allow our students to be part of the lesson design. Do we dedicate time in class to sit with them and plan tomorrow's class? Or that's something that we have to do because we're the teachers? You want to make it real? Allow them to help you designing the lesson for the next day. Okay? You don't have to do everything that they say, but with one little thing that you do that they suggested, they're going to be feeling so connected and they're going to be feeling that this is a real class. Okay? Muy bien. Grammar. We should look at the grammar after the fact, not before. Just use the language, give examples, keep using the language, expose them to the language, input, 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 and then show them how that grammar part works, because then it's going to connect. Grammar will never connect if you show it first and then try to use it in context. That's the way it is, okay? because we acquire, we don't learn a second language. Every interaction must have a real context for the student, something they can see themselves as part, sorry, there's a typo there, as part of, okay? L1 can be used to start or to direct a topic or conversation, but not to reinstate what has been said in the target language. And we talk about that at the beginning. Muy bien, amigos. Okay, well, so the students know how to recognize authenticity. They know who's authentic. The moment the teacher walks in for their first class ever, they just look at your face and they know if you're authentic or not. They know that immediately. Immediately. That's something that especially teenagers have on them, okay? So we don't need to be the professor and we don't need to be the clown, okay? The difference between fictional, fantastic, classroom created stories and real stories is that the real ones move us, meaning the real ones have the power to bring up reactions, human reactions in us, because we're connected to reality, okay? And when you react to something, you remember that. It's memorable, okay? And that's very important in second language acquisition, okay? So instead of thinking about the cultural project, let's think about intercultural projects, meaning where the students can see themselves as part of that project, not as just storytellers of what they saw or read, okay? They are not just the spectators. They have to be immersed in whatever project that you do in the class. Interculturality is the 21st century thing and beyond, okay? Muy bien. So, fraudulent versus honest. A real second language class doesn't need to explain why the L2 is studied. As simple as that. The L2 is just used for communicative purposes. You don't have to explain why are we in that class. You just need to use the language to communicate. And their brain is going to understand, oh, we're here to be able to communicate in the second language. Duh, as simple as that. The curriculum is never enough reason why a second language must be studied. We live on a multicultural, multi-languages planet. Isn't that enough? Not the curriculum, okay? Muy bien. We don't learn a second language in order to make more money in the future. We learn a second or third language so we can have more friends. We can understand the world and our own life. Amigos, friends, the second language classroom is one of the few places that the students have to become real human beings, to learn about themselves, to understand the world, and as I said before, to be happy. Always keep that in mind, because it's not about the test. It's not about going to the next level. It's about their lives. How empathetic can they be? How empathic they can be in the future, okay? We don't learn a second language so we get ready to travel. There's no need to travel to use it in a real context. Not everyone will travel, okay? So there are people from different places all over the world. So even if you don't travel, you're gonna find one of them. But just through social media, you don't have to go anywhere. You can meet people through social media. Friends, I have so many friends, and I hope that we can connect at some point via social media. I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're a Spanish teacher that is from Japan, but you teach Spanish. I don't care if you teach French in Uganda. Yeah, we're all language teachers, and we connect, and we might exchange ideas, we might collaborate, and we might never meet in person. But that's the real world today, now these days. That's how people interact. Many, especially during COVID-19, right? Okay, illusory versus genuine. Cultural artifacts are not the culture. The sombrero is not the culture. okay? The maracas are not the culture. The papel picado is not the culture. People are the culture. So please keep that in mind. Cute expressions, hola, hola, Coca-Cola, are just that, cute expressions. But sometimes they can prevent real communication. I had many situations like that, you know, where the simple hola from someone who doesn't speak Spanish but is trying to connect with me with the hola, that feels so ungenuine. That feels so, I get freaked out, okay? I'm like, hi, I don't even reply hola, right? That is not communicating, that is not connecting, okay? Muy bien. Definitions and applications of relevant in the world language classroom. So remember, things that are occurring and existing in actuality, some things that exist in fact or reality. So we must think, what is the student's reality? Okay, what is our student's reality? School, their city, the world, the country, themselves, interests, friends, family. What comprises students' reality? Okay. Things to our students, things that are related to everyday concerns of activities. So the most important thing to our students, if we're talking about middle school, upper school students, are daily routine. But what is the daily routine? The daily routine is that I shower, I comb my hair, I put my, no. That's just the reflexive verbs lesson, okay? But the daily routine for these kids are the time they wake up, the classes they take, the breaks they have at school, the homework, if they work, and anything they do before bed. That's what your lesson should be touching right now. Any type of lesson, any topic, you need to focus on those things because those are the things that are interesting to them. Not all of those things that the textbooks say. Textbooks, they have to fill a lot of pages. That's different. Behaving or presenting in a way that feels true, honest, or familiar and without pretension or affectation. Are we enjoying what we do? Meaning, when we talk about being genuine, are we able to kind of like give our students the idea that we enjoy what we do? Or are we the teachers who are always thinking that we struggle, that this is hard, that the students are not responding the way they should? Every time you say those things outside of the classroom, it's going to be reflected in your face when you enter the classroom the next day. How do we connect with our students? At what levels? Do we really connect with them? I'm not saying that you have to be best friends, but are we really connecting to them? Do we really care about them? Or is this just a job? And you know what? I'm burned after COVID-19, after hybrid instruction, after remote instruction. I'm done. That's when you're saying this was just a job for you. And education is not just a job. Okay, my friends, to finish, teacher perspectives. Okay, what do the teachers say when I ask them what means to be real and relevant in the world language instruction? So this teacher at LJohns10 on Twitter said, we start in L2, how are you today? When I push them for more info, why are you blank? I let them respond in L1, but I recast it to them in L2. I'll ask them more clarifying questions in L2, let them respond in L1. L2 feels real when they hear me talking about their lives. Okay, I think that instead of like saying everything in Spanish and then everything in English or vice versa, this teacher is trying to connect with the students to make sure that they understand what she or he is saying. And that's part of a technique that we can also use in the classroom. The important thing is to keep growing in the language and allowing them good input so they can eventually express those things that you're asking in the target language. Okay, awesome, thank you. Another teacher said, let's see. To me, real language means connected to the real world, not just classroom exercise, which brings up ACTFL's 5 C's of community. Okay, fifth C, community. I give choices and push students to use Spanish outside of the classroom for enjoyment, enrichment, and advancement. Okay, so connected to the real world. But there's one thing, and I talked to Senora Witkowski about this. You can have real world interactions in the classroom as well. What do you need to do? Just to be real, relevant, and genuine. And it doesn't matter if you don't get out of the classroom. Yeah, I talk about the opportunities outside of the classroom, but the main one is that creation of community inside of the classroom. And that can be very genuine, okay? Muy bien. Students' perspective. So I ask former and current students, what is real or what's relevant? How did I make things real and relevant in my classes? So Elise, she's a freshman in college right now, said, when the classroom becomes a safe place, key. The classroom must be a safe place to the students so they know it's real. Teacher must have a high level of comfort and approachability with the students. You need to be yourself. We talk about that, okay? Students have to see understanding a new language as their goal, not just as memorization. As I tell teachers, teaching is a life project. Teaching is not a job. And if we're not able to connect teaching to our real life, it's going to be really hard to really enjoy it. Okay. Muy bien. Julia, she's a sophomore in college. She said, variation in the types of assignments and projects, that makes it real. Yeah, because you take from different angles. Projects that show real applications, we talk about that. Meaningful class beginnings in Spanish if possible, meaning when you start your class by connecting with your students about something that is not related to the lesson, it's 10 times better because they know that you're connecting in a real level, okay? Just chat about life. 5, 10 minutes at the most is gonna grant you a beautiful lesson later on. Simeon said, we always talk about things that were going on in our lives. He is a sophomore. Yeah, he's a sophomore also in college. So see, he's referring to those first 5, 10 minutes. They knew they will come to the class to talk about themselves in Espanol, in the target language. And if they didn't know something, they will say it in English, and then, you know, we will negotiate meaning. Now, Katie is also a sophomore in college. Encouragement to meet native Spanish speakers, meaning working with those immigrant organizations, right? Connect words with our lives. And this is what we try to do in the LIT AP Spanish literature class, because we're not there just to remember authors and titles of books or characters. We are there to be able to connect what those texts say about life with our lives. So when we connect words with our lives, they are meaningful, they are real. Current students, Zakaria, incorporate language, culture with language. The language must be tangible, not simply something that we must learn. I love that he used that word, tangible. So the language must be tangible, not simply something that we must learn. Thank you, Zakaria. Lily says, by telling stories about your own life, they want to be heard. Topics students actually want to learn about. Okay, do they really want to learn about that fictional character every class for the entire year? Okay. Well said. When the class is able to speak comfortably, I believe I learned the language much easier and we can talk about anything. Which is true because it's that famous affective filter that Dr. Krashen says. Okay. And Gus says, when we learn about inclusion in contrast to the recent government policies that seem to deter these ideas, meaning we talk about what's going on, see? And I know that sometimes that sounds political and sometimes it's better to avoid these things, but if you can exemplify what's going on in the current world with what was going on during the Middle Ages, students like, man, this is repeating again. So what Gus said is quite important. Okay, my friends, I want to thank you so much for, if you're still here, for staying here. Once again, my name is Diego Ojeda. If you have any questions, we have many ways to be in touch. The first one, that's my email here, diego@senorojeda.com. I welcome questions. I welcome kind comments. I welcome just hellos, okay? If you want to look at previous presentations, workshops, blog posts, different topics, please go to www.srojeda.com. I'm sure you're gonna find something for your class there, okay? And if you have Instagram, please follow me on Instagram as Senor Ojeda. If you're on Twitter, look for Diego Ojeda. If you're on Facebook, look for Diego Ojeda. There is a guy who's a singer in Spain, whose name is Diego Ojeda, but you're gonna tell which is the bold, old, short guy. That's me. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you to for this opportunity to the Global SEAL. And I would like to extend my thank you to everyone involved in this wonderful organization and this wonderful opportunity. Thank you so much. I'll see you next time. Adios.